right, we are now live for our first auction property. Hopefully there will be more to come in the future. So I'd like to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. I hope everyone has got a nice dinner already. I know it's a Friday night. Most people we really are making plans to go for lepak session. You know, we have our partner Sean already in his room having a glass of whiskey, having
Chinese tea.
Chinese tea laced with I don't know what in his room, So I know it's Friday night. Most of you like to make plans, lepak or have a session, Netflix session, but today we're going to make it worth your time. We've got really experienced speakers joining us tonight, so I can promise you that this today is going to be worthwhile to take your time off and we will be having a fire chat session. It's going to be informal, so hopefully you'll be a bit more engaging and you'll be able to absorb and digest more of what we'll be sharing with you tonight. All right, so I'll just get right into it. Let me just first start off by introducing our speakers. Okay, so first off, we have Kenny Lee. All right, I'm sure every one of you are eager to learn more about our speaker. So let me just read off his profile so that I don't miss out anything important. All right, so Kenny is currently a real estate agent, author, and ex-mortgage banker. All right, he authored a book in Bahasa Malaysia titled Tolong Luluskan to help people understand how banks approve mortgages and how to get their loans approved. He has helped countless property investors and home buyers to get their dream homes and investments over the course of his career. Now, moving on to our next speaker, we have Francis Lau. Now, Francis is a director of Cornerstone Estate and holds a degree in estate management from Heriot-Watt University, United Kingdom. He is also a registered financial planner and a real estate agent and has over 30 years experience in the real estate industry. He is also a licensed auctioneer and is well versed in the property development process in Malaysia and provides project marketing. Now, next we have our very own Suzanne Pham. All right, Suzanne is our senior associate at Donovan Ho and specializes in property and conveyancing. She is experienced in advising, guiding, and assisting prospective buyers and sellers on how best to ensure transactions are carried out smoothly and efficiently with minimal complications and setbacks. Right. So before we begin, I will invite our partner, Sean. All right, he heads our corporate and conveyancing practice department. I'll invite him to give us a welcome address before we start our session today. I'll hand it over to Sean.
Thank you, Adryenne. Good evening, everybody out there. And first of all, thank you very much, Francis and Kenny, for participating in our very first Facebook Live appearance by Donovan Ho, and on a very exciting topic indeed. So I'll just say a few words before we hand over the session to yourselves, as we are really interested in learning more from the two different perspectives or three different perspectives that you have to offer. So today, we actually celebrate our first birthday of the MCO. How time has flown by. It's already been 1 year since the MCO kicked in due to COVID. All right. And just 1 year ago, many businesses were suddenly impacted, shut down. Property use has evolved because of this sudden impact. Many retrenchments have taken place, unfortunately. There were also many business closures, and this continues to persist even during the course of this year, 2021. Hopefully the vaccines come in and life will resume as normal. However, this is the new norm, right? And notwithstanding the bank moratoriums that the government has granted, this actually just deferred the full impact of defaults on property loans. And I understand that, in 2021, unfortunately, we will then start seeing more defaults and the actual crystallization of these properties that have defaulted coming into market. So with every crisis, they say comes opportunity. And there are, of course, a segment of the market in Malaysia that also still is looking out for property for either their own stay or investment. And the auction market really presents an opportunity for this group of people. So tonight, our aim is really just to get different views, different perspectives from different professionals such as yourselves, to learn about the auction property process and the market and certain insights, which I'm sure will be very, very valuable for our audience. All right. So once again, thank you for our panelists here, and let's have a nice conversation on this topic on auction property 101. So I'll hand this time over to Adryenne. Over to you, Miss Moderator.
All right, thanks, Sean, for the welcome address. I just realized after during a round of introduction that I forgot to introduce myself. So my name is Adryenne. I'll be your moderator for tonight, for this evening, and I'll be asking questions on your behalf. Our viewers who are interested or thinking into getting into investing or buying an auction property, I'll be asking questions on your behalf. Any questions that I think a prospective buyer will be interested to learn more. All right, so maybe I'll just begin with my own personal experience. Now, I myself, I have not owned my own my own property, right? So I'm also trying to save and looking into buying one for myself. And honestly speaking, I've considered subsale, condos, landeds, but I've never really considered auction properties. And it's the reason for that is because I've heard horror stories, and I'm sure most people have had the same experience. You always know someone who knows someone who knows someone who's had a very bad experience with auction properties. The horror stories, bodies in auction properties, it's such a terrifying thing, to discover as you're buying your first property for investment or for your own stay. These are really reasons why I haven't really considered, buying an auction property. But perhaps I think there might be some misinformation there, and maybe tonight will be the time for us to, find out whether there is any truth to it. Base your decisions right now. For me, at least, I base my decisions on anecdotal accounts, which are not representative of what really happens in real life. One bad experience, one bad example does not mean that it's really something you shouldn't consider at all. So maybe I will start, with all these warm-up questions, find out a bit more about whether these myths or these anecdotal accounts have any truth at all. So I'll begin the first question by asking, opening up this question to the floor, maybe particularly to Suzanne and Francis, whether there's any truth to these myths. Are there any myths that you've heard about auction properties which are actually untrue? So maybe Suzanne, I can start off with you. Maybe you can help share some light or your personal experience in this.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Adryenne. The two common myths that we often hear about auction properties are, first one, auction properties are cheaper compared to secondary properties. We always assume that it's cheaper to buy auction property because of the price. However, one of the misconceptions of the general public is that they are not aware that these unpaid utilities such as electricity, water, sewerage, your management fees, cost for unanticipated of renovation if it's really in bad condition, since we can't inspect inside of the property. And also perhaps overbidding may drive the final price to be more expensive than the current market value. So this would actually total a very huge amount of money. The second misconception that we hear that is very common is that auction properties are very old, less valuable, and not up to living standards. So this is also another misunderstanding of the general public. Do take note that not all auction properties that are very old, less valuable, and not very well maintained, or not up to living standards. There are auction properties out there that is very relatively new, between 3 to 4 years or even lesser, that are well renovated, guarded, and gated. So these auction properties found in prime areas such as perhaps in KLCC, such developers are targeting these foreign investors or bulk investors, and where property couldn't be rent out when it's completed, which also resulting in foreclosures. So it is highly advisable to do some research before you actually desire to buy the auction property. Yeah. So perhaps Francis could also share on his myth stories. Yeah.
Okay, the first time usually people call us is the property somebody die inside or any unfortunate things happen? I will tell them straight. I say, if you pay your bank, you pay your loan every month, even though how many people die inside, the bank will not auction it. Okay? The bank will only auction it when you fail to pay. Okay? So most of them is thinking something bad has happened, and like you said, they're always telling you about the stories. They found a body in the fridge. And I always tell them that in the history of Malaysia, I think that's the only one. The chances of you striking Toto is much higher than you find a body in the house that you buy. Okay?
That's a really
So yeah, so the chances is very, very slim. Okay. Another thing is they always ask for the auction property, why I can't view inside. You see, I saw in the movie, you see, when it's on auction, the bank's supposed to foreclosure and we can view inside. The misconception here is a lot of people think that it's a movie. We are not in US. I said this is Malaysia. Malaysia law don't allow the bank to kick the person out who default on their loan. The property is always sell as is basis. Okay. And secondly is like a lot of people say that they might getting old property, but lately, just for your information, there's a lot of new property coming up, which is brand new. They got the key after 3 months, it's on auction. So basically, you buying much cheaper, like 40-50% below the developer price, and you get the key and you open up, everything is brand new, come together with developer warranty. Okay, so this is what happening now to a lot of new condo, so-called KLCC area. But you look carefully, it's not really in KLCC. It's more towards the end of Ampang, but they will still tell you that 5 minutes to KLCC, but they never tell you that 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay.
all right. Yeah, as I was doing my research, just browsing through, all these advertisements for auction properties, I saw that, it's not true at all that they are all cheap and dilapidated. In fact, a lot of the properties I found online were actually high end. We're talking about 2 million, 1 million onwards, or it could range between 200,000 to even 5 million.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily true that it's always cheap, right? So yeah, it's really a relief to hear that the chances of me striking a lottery is higher than actually finding a body in a newly purchased auction property, right? So now that we've addressed those part of the misconceptions about the property, perhaps maybe we can also look into how about news about manipulation of the auction prices and the bidding process. I read somewhere in the news that there are syndicates who are working together to manipulate the bidding process, the prices of auction properties. Maybe Francis, if you have any experience with that, can you share your thoughts or your comments on that?
Okay, previously, like 10, 15 years back, yes, it's true. Okay, especially in high court. Okay, high court, or we call it another one is LACA auction, which the title is not issued. You can see once you put in your bank draft, there's drove of people is putting in their bank draft as well. Okay. And once they put, they will come and tell you, you want to negotiate. If you don't want to negotiate, the price will be very high. Maybe the genuine bidder maybe about 2, but the fake one maybe you have 5 or 6. Okay, so a lot of people is very pissed off. The intention is go to the court, buy cheap property, but they ended up need to pay all this and then jack up the price. But a lot of these things have been changed recently. Okay, the old guard basically has been kicked out. Okay, just for your info, I can't tell you very clearly in everything because it's very sensitive. So generally, I will tell you. Okay, so now there's another group. We don't say this is syndicate. This is part of the arrangement. Okay, when certain time you can strike a certain deal to get a certain price. Okay, because this is live, I can't really go to specific a lot of things.
Yep.
Okay, it's not very convenient.
Okay.
So you're talking about syndicate that manipulate all these things I can say it's no more. First of all, for the High Court. And secondly, starting last year, all the new cases has been going to the e-lelong. That means if the title is issued, the bidding is no more conducted in High Court, it's conducted to electronic, where you deposit your bank draft to the High Court and you bid at a certain time through your computer.
Right.
Okay, that one is you make sure that there's no manipulation. You press the button. If you are alone, you are alone. If more than that, you bid. Okay, same with LACA auction. LACA auction, which is the auction that conducted by the auction house. After the pandemic, I can say that 95% at least of the auction is conducted online. Okay, so basically now you can bid from the comfort of your home. You can transfer the money, your 10%, and you can sit there, wait for that date, and you bid. If you fail, they will refund you the next day. If you're successful, everything is online. Okay. So this is part of the what you call the SOP that they implement after the COVID. So to say that there's still people manipulating, yeah, once a while you got a what you call that, a cowboy come in, but that's about it.
It's more of an exception, than the norm.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's fairly safe to participate in the bidding process from the comfort in your own home now that a lot of it is done online.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that certainly helps, to address, some of the questions that I personally have, which is the reason why I don't really consider auction properties. So now that we've kind of debunked or addressed some of the myths on auction properties, maybe the next question is really on, understanding the nature of auction properties. How is it different from, subsales in terms of the process and even loan, for example? Maybe I can start off with Suzanne. Maybe you can share with us, what are the differences between buying a subsale property versus buying an auction property?
Sure. The difference between buying subsale property versus buying auction property, there are several points that I can actually share for today's sharing. First, we look at time frame for completion of the transaction. For example, let's take property with title of freehold tenure can take about 3 months from the date of the SMP, which is your sale and purchase agreement, to complete, while perhaps for a subsale property without title, that will take about 3 months from the date of your developer's confirmation. However, if we look at for auction properties, you have your LACA. LACA means your loan agreement cum assignment, meaning to say it's without title. It will take about 90 days from the date of your proclamation of sale. While auction non-LACA, which is basically with individual title or strata title, that takes about 120 days from your proclamation of sale. So these two are the difference lah for the time frame when you buy your subsale property versus your auction property. Next, we can also look at the documentation. There are also differences in these two type of sale transaction. So for buying an auction, the POS is treated as your S&P, while
POS meaning proclamation of sale.
correct, proclamation of sale is treated as your SPA, and your additional documents that it will be your borang, your either borang F 16F, which is your High Court auction document, or also known as your deed of assignment if the property is without title. Yeah. So for vacant possession, it's also different because for auction, definitely you don't get a vacant possession. But for a subsale property, at the end of the sale transaction, you will usually be given the keys to your house lah. Okay. I think that's all about some of the differences that are really important that I can highlight lah.
Right. So it's mainly in terms of time frame, right? In completion of the transaction, and also the documentations, which is getting a little technical, but nonetheless, it's also important for the buyers to understand, right? So earlier you mentioned something about LACA, non-LACA. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit for those who are not familiar with the terms. What do they mean?
For LACA means, which is LACA, which means loan agreement cum assignment. So for this transaction, this property is without title, so meaning to say that it's still under master title. So so meaning to say that these are the ones that you basically need to prepare your deed of assignment to sign the agreement lah. So for non-LACA, which is basically your documents with individual title or strata title.
So when it goes on auction, the process will be different as well. I imagine if it's with title, it would be through the High Court. Maybe if you explain a little bit more on that part.
Oh, okay. So if it's non-LACA, you can look, since this auction will be regulated under our National Land Code,
right.
This non-LACA, we can actually separate it into two, which is first will be auction by High Court, or second will be by the land administrators. So if it's auction under the High Court, which is typically the fixed deposit is fixed at 10%, which has to be paid to the court before the auction day lah. So no extension is given. So meaning to say, if you fail to complete your transaction, meaning to say that you fail to pay your balance purchase price within the 120 days, your 10% deposit will be forfeited. Okay. Same goes with under the auction properties by the land office, also the land administrators. Same, your 10%. If you fail to pay within 120 days, it will be also forfeited. Yeah.
So these are properties with title, correct? You will follow the National Land Code, the procedures. So for properties without title, it would be through
it will be on auction house. It will be contractual based because it's not bound any legislation or not regulated by the NLC, which is our National Land Code. So same, you are required to put either your 5% or 10% based on your proclamation of sale, and it has to be, and the balance purchase price has to be paid within 90 days. So for LACA auction, which is it's a bit different. So meaning to say that sometimes the bank do allow for extension. It's just that you need to request, the condition is you have to request in advance before the date actually passes. Yeah.
All right. So there's a bit of a freedom there in terms of like negotiating with the bank, whereas with the High Court, if you miss the deadline means the deposit will be forfeited. So it's stricter in that sense, and easier, had more flexibility to negotiate if it's a LACA
True.
property.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So from the more like the legal point of view, it's really time frame, documentation, LACA, non-LACA, high court, right? So how about from the loan perspective, Kenny, if I can just get you to give some insights. Is there any difference in how the banks actually process loans when it comes to buying a subsale property, for example, versus buying an auction property?
Okay, thanks, Adryenne. That's a good question, actually. Actually, there is a little bit of difference between subsales, under construction, and also auction properties. Some banks, just now Suzanne mentioned, right, POS time. There's some banks who are very strict with the POS time. Anything less than 90 days, automatically reject. Okay, so there's this bank, uh, s- they will actually look at the POS. So if it's not high court auction, which is 120 days, you pass to this bank, no problem. But if you this non for auction house, you first day you bid, right, next day you reject. So less than 90 days, the bank will automatically reject. And some banks, they will actually insist on site visit for all the properties. It doesn't matter what the value is. You have to go and site visit, take photos, come back, then they consider your application. Some
Right.
banks, there's a lot of difference. Sometimes, right, for example, they even like some there's a black, for example, bank has a blacklisted area. This is considered like negative listing area. How this kind of areas, right? The banks have many reasons to actually don't want to finance properties in that area. So when you send to auction, right, that bank last time back then when the property first sold, the bank is financing that area. But the same bank, when you submit for your loan, they may reject it because on this the policies has changed. Okay, so there's these things that you need to understand before you even submit the loan application for that bank. So prepare that part.
I see.
There's
Right.
a lot of it's always changing. It's not fixed at that.
Okay, so it's on the buyer to find out from the banks what actually the criteria when they process the loan, what are the reasons they could possibly reject due to the reasons you mentioned earlier. So it's really on us to find out from the banks then.
You are right. I Before you go auction, right?
Mm.
It's the same as buying a subsale property or undercom property or every property. I always tell the clients, right? You check your bank first. For example, let's just say you have auction even easier. You have the POS with all the specific address, everything is there. You check your bank. Hey, your bank finance or not this property, this area. Developer all okay or not? Okay. If it's got title, no need to ask. Show okay one. Okay. So, but sometimes it's because of the area, and the banker
Mm.
may not know. Submit ni the risk without actually telling. So you be prepared lah, not just one bank, few banks prepare.
The area, this is interesting.
Yes,
The area affects how the bank actually makes the decision
correct.
on whether to. Okay. Francis, do you have any experience with that? Like, have you encountered any situation where the area is just so bad the banks wouldn't even approve the loan
we
application?
we we already, when we market the property, we already know whether this property is favorable by bank or not. Certain place, Bukit Antara Bangsa, straight away they will reject. That's why when the bidding, the price is usually very low. You can get a condo apartment for like below 200K, very cheap. But most of the bank, they don't want to finance except certain banks because of the risk of the landslide. Secondly,
Oh,
house near to the oxidation pond, T junction. All this also is another negative factor. Bank
That
don't
is
like to give out loans.
correct.
Okay,
Site
so
visit report.
thirdly, some of the bank, your house behind is a high tension. Also, they do not like, because a
Okay.
lot of people are very particular about high tension. Okay, and even though like certain area previously in Klang where there's a lot of gangster and drug, also they mark it as a black
Also,
area. Yes,
Yes, in Klang, there's a very famous area in Klang that the banks don't finance.
Sentosa.
Ayo, need to mention live chat me, you are.
So for us is we always try to market something which is not a problematic for the buyer to get a loan. We won't go to market a property that we know later on you got problem.
There's also an area in Klang where there's prone to flood. They also don't finance
Yes.
the area.
oh,
Yes.
wow.
Yes. But certain banks is due to policy. Some banks, right, they avoid totally Cyberjaya. Some banks are total, but I don't know about auction. But most likely, safe to say, if they avoid for subsale, they avoid for auction also.
Oh.
Mm.
So if the borrower defaults on their payment and no bank would loan to buyers, right, who are interested in that property, then there's really no way for the bank to actually get back the debt, right? Because nobody is able to buy that property, right?
So not really, Adryenne. You see, in Malaysia, blessed because we have over million in population, but we have 13 banks. We are so small, but we have so many banks. So definitely there'll be one bank that will take one. Don't worry.
The odd one.
Yes. Just keep on finding. No such thing as a property that the bank won't finance.
Okay.
As long as the buyer's profile is fits the criteria, they will finance. Don't worry.
So when the auction properties, the reserve price is like too low, too below market value, means you have to view it with caution then, because it possibly could mean that it's at an area that is really hard to find buyers or banks to finance the purchase.
Let me
If
put it
it's
this way, Adryenne. Anything that is too good to be true, be careful. That includes property investing or anything else in life. Okay?
That is one life lesson for everyone. If it's too good to be true, it's probably too
It
good to
probably
be
is too
true.
good true. Yeah, be
Yeah.
careful.
Okay, all right. So perhaps if I am really thinking of buying an auction property, just wondering aloud, like in terms of supply and demand, like now that you know with the COVID situation, do we actually see like an increase in the supply for auction properties? Francis, do you have like any insights to share on that?
Okay, actually with the moratorium, basically there's no new supply. Okay, the moratorium now is until June when they apply. So if you expect any new stock to come in, will be next year. And for your information, the auction property is selling like hotcake now. All over the world, the market price of the properties have increased. And the price is even higher than before the MCO. We have never been lack of bidder after they lifted up the MCO that allowed the court or the auction house to operate. Initially, we also is very surprised. Suddenly, it's like previously it's so difficult to get a bidder, but suddenly now it's like everybody is coming out to buy. What happened? You say market is down, but you just go to the high court auction now. You can see that there's so many bidders. It's like packed. You don't believe it until you see it yourself. A lot of bidder is asking me, I should able to get very cheap price during this period because people is out of job, the economy is bad. I say no, you are wrong. In actual fact, you might get a higher price than before the MCO because everybody is buying. Even though there's recently one house that facing T junction, They tried to sell it like a year. The price dropped until 400 and 1,000 facing T junction. And we have about 20 bidders. And the price went up to 510 facing T junction. People is just crazy nowadays.
Okay. So the competition is stiff then, like for a bidder, if there are so many bidders, means the prices will drive
Yes.
up the prices then.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the actual situation now.
Right now.
Yes.
It's a little confusing to me. I really expected, there to be, an abundance of supply for auction properties. Now there are so many bidders that I have to compete with.
You can still get the most demand is more on the landed. For the condo, you still can get a very good price. Like certain area like Cyberjaya, further out of the town, you still can get very good price, like up to 50% of the below developer price. But you're talking about prime area like in KLCC and all that, the demand is still very strong. Surprisingly, there's still a lot of bidder up to today.
Okay. All right. So let's say I'm really interested in bidding for an auction property, right? So I think one of the main things that every buyer should be concerned about is really the cost. Okay, so maybe Francis, if you could share, like, what is the cost that I should, if I want to participate in bidding the process, in the bidding process, what is the cost that I should be prepared to pay upfront to participate in the bidding, for example?
Okay, first of all, it depends whether you go for LACA or non-LACA. Okay, LACA, usually every bank have their different rules, but most of them will pay for all the outstanding maintenance, quick rent, and assessment. But basically, most of them won't pay for your utility. Utility you need to settle. Okay, but certain bank they only pay half, certain bank they don't pay. So you need to read the proclamation of sale very carefully, or the condition of sale very carefully, whether they're going to absorb or not. For high court is standard, they're only going to absorb the quick rent and assessment. They wouldn't absorb the outstanding maintenance if you are buying a strata. For a land office, they will absorb for the quick rent assessment and the outstanding maintenance. So you need to know which one you are bidding, LACA, non-LACA, or high court or land office. Okay, so if let's say example, they already cover everything up to the date of auction that you're going to bid for the non-LACA, for a LACA case. So basically your expenses should be the same, okay, like the normal sales and purchase. But there's an exceptional case that I need to highlight here, okay? Because not a lot of people aware of this risk. Even though it's a LACA case, they still have risk attached. Okay, let me tell you a few examples. One of them is, it's a LACA case, but strata title is issued. Still under developer name, but it's still auctioned in LACA because the name is not transferred yet. Okay. So when they transfer, when you bought the property, you bid and you successfully. If the developer say, okay, I allow you to do a direct transfer, it's okay. But certain time certain developer will request a very high fees for transferring to you under direct transfer. Certain developer, they don't even allow direct transfer. You're going to do a double transfer. Double transfer means double stamp duty. Time frame will be dragged. If freehold, it's okay. If leasehold, you're going to get a state consent again. Bank need to sign on behalf. Can drag up to 1 to 2 years. And you need to keep on asking extension, and the bank is charging you 10% per annual interest. So all this is additional cost. Okay? And another thing, a lot of people is not aware. You bought a property. Developer willing to sign to do a direct transfer for you. Okay, this is very special. Then you got a loan. But when it start to release, you got stuck. The lawyer is in panic. The bidder is in panic. Why? Strata, individual title is issued or strata title is issued. But in order for the developer to do the transfer, they want the bank to sign an undertaking. That's where the problem come in. And most of the bank will not sign an undertaking. Then you got stuck. Time frame is running. Developer want your financial to sign an undertaking. Your financial would not sign. So this is one of the problem that a lot of bidder have their 10% forfeited. Okay, certain developer is very strict. Then to successfully transact, you need to pay in cash first, because you can sign undertaking. You pay in cash first, then the bank pay you back again. So there's certain case will be very complicated in auction, which you need to be aware of. Even though we do the checking, we call up the developer will tell you, yeah, we can do direct transfer, no problem. But come to the final stage, they say that we want the bank to sign an undertaking. That's where the problem comes. And all the bank will refuse to sign an undertaking. So this is one of the lessons that I think a lot of people still not aware. So there is a risk, especially for property, that's almost title is issued.
So it's quite a bit of hidden costs there that potential buyers might not be aware of, especially when the strata title is issued, when you require the developers to actually execute the MOT, right, for the transfer.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So in light of all these hidden costs, I wonder if it's actually possible to mitigate such risks. Is there a way we can find out these hidden costs or problems that before even getting into it? Maybe Suzanne, if you could share your thoughts on this. Is there a way, any due diligence that we can do prior to getting into this bidding process, and just to avoid these kind of pitfalls?
Yeah, definitely. As a interested bidder, before you actually go for your bidding, you should do your due diligence. You can actually appoint your solicitor, of your preference solicitor, to actually help you to do the basic checks. First, like what Francis mentioned, you can do checks on the utilities to make sure that the outstanding are within your cash flow, because you need to have the cash to basically pay all this upfront. So make sure that you ask the lawyer to help you to do the check on your utilities, such as the quick rent, the assessment, the management, and not to forget also TNB, which is your electricity, and also your Shabas. So because like Francis mentioned, these are not usually absorbed by the bank. So as the intended bidder, you should actually do these searches first, because it's the cost itself is very large. Sometimes you'll be shocked when you see those bills, the outstanding. Yeah. So not only about the outstanding utility charges, you should also do checks. For example, like your basic land search, because a simple land search could actually explain a lot. You can look at the restriction in the title, the tenure, whether is it leasehold or freehold, and to make sure also to check with the developer, is it has the title been issued or not, or is it still under master title, and most importantly is to check whether is it a bumi lot or not, because if let's say you're a non-bumi and you want to purchase a bumi lot, that would be quite actually difficult, yeah, I could say. So I think for us, how we can actually help with client is that we do provide these basic searches, this due diligence to our customer out there with just a simple, very small fee.
Okay, for the due diligence, you said you can you've assisted your clients with land search, and from these you can find out whether there's restriction in interest and things like that. And private caveat even. I imagine that would be quite an important aspect of your due diligence. So what is the effect of a private caveat actually? Like
Okay.
on for
Okay, so if
buyers?
let's say the property is with title, and upon doing your land search result, you saw there will be a third party caveat. So in order to actually consider buying an auction property, you have to make sure that is this caveat, who is this person who entered this caveat? Is it possible to remove the caveat? What are the costs that to be considered? And because removing a third party caveat might also take time, so these are all these risks that you must actually look at before you actually proceed to bid for the property.
Okay. So we can also find out like in terms of the utilities if it's already been settled from your search.
Uh, Meaning of utilities, usually utilities, if it's a landed property, usually we just get our runner to do the necessary searches at the TNB for your electricity, Shabas for your water, quick rent and assessment, these are easily extracted. Yeah, we can help clients to do these searches.
Okay, knowing upfront definitely helps us make a better decision, right? Because
Mm.
then you know like what other hidden costs that you have to be prepared to pay. Because I imagine the utilities bills is not it can go up to a few thousand, 10,000 even. I've heard from a friend the utilities bills went up to 10,000 and it's really quite a lot for first time buyer especially.
Yeah, correct. So we usually advise our client to at least put a ballpark figure, at least 5 to 10%. If let's say the property, for example, that you are going to bid, perhaps the reserve price is at 300,000, right? So at least to keep at a side for 5 to 10% to pay for these outstanding utilities.
Okay, that's definitely helpful to know that we can actually find out a lot more about the property. You know, you cannot do internal inspection, but at the very least, you should make sure that these things are in order, right? You don't have any private caveat lodged, which would be a headache for a buyer, because what it does is that it prevents any dealings on the land until the caveat is lifted. So it definitely helps to have a land search, to conduct a land search and you know as part of your due diligence. All
Yes.
right. Okay, so any other common mistakes that you have seen, Francis, that buyers can avoid in the future when they do want to consider buying an auction property? Any other common mistakes that you've seen that we should all avoid?
I think the most important thing is if you have sufficient cash, you don't really worry about a lot of things because with the cash you can buy time. Okay, and just for your information, there's a lot of bidder who love property that is problematic. They will always look for the property with a lot of problematic caveat, registrar caveat, you name it. Okay, big utility, because you know why? For people who very well versed, this is not the issue, but the competitor will be much lesser and you can get a good price. You see, in this game, in auction, the people who have money, they don't really care about all these things because they know what they want is a good buy. Okay, just for sharing, for utility, basically for the TMB, even though the bank is not going to bear, or the what you call it, the court not going to bear, but basically you no need to pay. Okay, because you know why? We previously certain TMB say you need to pay, certain TMB say you no need to pay. But I even went to the HQ to get a confirmation with the letter. TMB now would go after the registered name. If you're gonna buy through auction and it change it to your name, the rest of the outstanding, you no need to pay a single cent. Okay, so this is a good news for the bidder. A lot of people still worried about that. I even have shop who has 50,000 outstanding. So they just changed to the new owner name. TMB will go after the old owner because it's based on contract. And I got a confirmation even from the HQ. The HQ said, if the branches insist you pay, come and look for me. Okay? But unfortunately, for Shabas, you need to pay all the outstanding. But usually, water would not go very much high, maybe in the range of the few hundred. So it's okay. So you save some. If you know more things, you will have more confidence to bid. And another thing is you need to be aware. Sometimes there's not only a private caveat you need to deal with, but the registrar caveat. Okay, most of the registrar caveat will be income tax, 99%, and most of the time you just give a call to the income tax. They will be very helpful. They will tell you exactly how much they owe, and you need to add in the price within the bidding price, so you know what is the expenses.
Okay, right. So maybe Francis, if you could also walk us through briefly the process involved in participating in a bidding process. You know, how if I want to participate, how do I go about it?
Okay, we just go straight to the point where you already confirm everything, check everything, and you want to proceed for bidding. Okay, basically bidding, the agent nowadays will assist the bidder. Basically, we check everything. What the bidder need to do is register. It's very important to register. Most of the time, we need a name, IC, address, and certain bank they need copy of bank draft. Okay, then if nowadays, if you're talking about LACA, which you do direct transfer, they need an acknowledgement. So after that, we will help you to opening a new account for bidding. And basically, the bidding there, you just press the button. That's it. Simple. Stress-free. And I just explained to one of my bidder, and he can't believe it. You sure it's so easy? I say, yeah. You only need to press a button to bid now. Wow.
Just be careful not to press it by accident. Oops.
So once you press is the higher bidder, usually they wouldn't allow you to press again. So it's quite safe compared with previously. You need to go to the auction house. You need to go to the hassle, raise your hand. So many. Sometimes the auctioneer cannot see your hand because now the hot property. When the next bid, you can see 10 hands is going up. So the auctioneer don't know which one to point. You know. So, but there is fun. You're talking about like a few years back. It's fun because the atmosphere is there. It's like a party. Everybody is raising hands, shouting. But nowadays it's so quiet. It's just like pressing a button.
Not so fun to watch like the old days.
Yeah, but
dramas.
Yeah, it's quite nothing much.
Yeah. All right. So maybe we can look from the loan side of things, right? If I want to apply for a loan, maybe Kenny, if you could share based on your experience, like how do banks generally assess someone's an applicant's eligibility for loan?
Actually, the same evaluation process for all types of property, whether you buy it from under construction, subsale, or auction. It's just that when you go deeper, you will see there's a minor difference from each and every sector. But in general, the first thing that the bank will look at is, of course, the character. Character here meaning your credit score, CRIS, CITOS. Next one is the capacity. Capacity here is, can you repay the loan? The bank will just asking this question: if I borrow you 500,000 today, can you repay your loan based on what you are earning today? This is where we talk about DSR, debt service ratio. You see, yes, it's just calculated by whatever your commitment that is seen in CRIS over your net income. Okay, the next one is the capital. Do you have the capital to pay? Like Mr. Francis mentioned, if The bank sometimes will ask you, yes, especially if you go for auction or subsales, show me the 10%. Show me savings. If you go under con, also same, savings. So if you can't show the savings, how am I going to borrow you? How are you going to pay the 10%? So what the bank will do is just like, he maybe will reject you or ask you, cut your margin further. So we have character, capacity, which is these two is the most important. Then you come to the capital. Capital is the savings you have. Okay, some banks would, then this is where the criteria come in. Then there was maybe some of the things they take as savings, some of the things they don't. Then after that, the next one we have the condition. Condition here refers to economic condition that is normally out of your control. Like for example, now economic condition, is it really bad? Is it affecting your role? But for example, let's just say today you are a pilot. You know pilot, right? What happened now? But not lend you, just based on this. Doesn't matter if you are still employed, but your salary is cut, maybe half, or even you have a full salary, unless you are in the top management yourself lah, and you're founder of the company, like AirAsia, then okay, no problem. That is condition. It's out of your control. It's based on what you do. Then the last part, the last one, a lot of people actually miss is the collateral itself. You see, according to the one where I said character, is it by the order of importance. As you go lower, it become less important. And a lot of people will be wondering why collateral is the least important. Anybody want to take a guess? Why collateral is the least important? Okay.
I think now they don't allow, the government don't allow you to go after the third party anymore. They amend the law, I think. For the guarantor.
Oh, okay. Guarantor is another story actually. Nowadays, a lot of banks don't do guarantor anymore. Yeah, only for car loans, yeah, normal. But housing, no. Okay. Actually, it's very the reason why it's last at the end, a lot of is because the bank's core business. What is the bank's core business? The bank's core business is lending. Lending means they earn from interest. They don't want your property. In fact, Bank Negara also said you cannot keep a property. The bank cannot own a property. Imagine today if the bank can own a property, how powerful they are. Okay, that's why they have to auction and get back. So collateral is the least important one at the end. Okay, so that's how the bank in general. But if you want to, but for outside, right? If for those who are watching, you don't need to think so much. Just take care of your credit score and also your capacity, DSR, enough. Yeah? That's all.
Okay,
So
just for your info, the only bank that will buy back the asset from auction is public bank. They have bought back a lot of property under holdings, and they will ask us to sell.
But they cannot buy direct under the bank, right?
Yeah. They have a holding, left hand to right hand.
Correct. That's correct, because they cannot do that under the right bank. Bank Negara don't allow that. They cannot own this kind of asset. So and it's very normal also to see banks, right? Like they do have like auction house, their own developer. They have a hand in that, but not directly. Developer, I don't need to mention which bank they have another sister company who's a developer. So, in fact, a lot of banks like that. And digital banks also, the consortium, I don't know whether you all know, there's a 16 license out for grabs, and some of the banks, right, traditional banks, they are going in the consortium, but not under they cannot go in under their bank name, but they can form a consortium outside and bid for the license. So it's like Mr. Francis said, left hand and right hand. Okay, I think we go off topic already.
It's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
Then, how long usually do banks take to process a loan application? Like, how long must I wait for me to get an answer whether my loan has been approved?
Actually, yeah. I would say, usually I would tell a customer 2 weeks.
2
But then
weeks.
within 1 week I settled it. within within three working days I settled it. Depends on
Okay.
how fast the credit is and how straightforward is the case. The more straightforward is, the faster it is. There are some banks morning submit, before 12, evening got result. Straight.
Wow, that's really fast.
Yes, that's straightforward cases. If auction, as I mentioned, they need to go to site visit. They need to do all this.
Yeah.
Then no, not that
So
fast.
that would take a bit longer then, since
Yes,
they need to do
yes,
site visit. Yeah.
yes. And then report and all this. Then yes.
Mm. All right.
Mm.
So moving on to the last part, all right, I'm more interested in the strategies, the tips aspect to buying an auction property. Maybe I can start with Francis. You could share any practical tips how to participate, how to take advantage or seize the opportunity, in bidding for an auction property.
Okay, the strategy is depends whether you are an investor, owner that you want to bid and buy for own use, or you just want to see whether there's a water fish to catch, or Chinese say is a frog coming out. Okay, it depends what you want basically. But what I can say is, in order to get a good price, most important is don't wait until the price rock bottom. You will never get the property. A lot of customer has been waiting and waiting, and every time the price drop, they are very happy. But when they decided to participate on the auction itself, the price went up 2 times of the earlier auction. Because you know
everybody
why?
is doing the same thing, right?
Yes.
Correct.
And bidder will never listen. They always tell you the logic. Yeah, they will tell you the logic. How can I bid now? The price can be higher than the last round. It doesn't make sense. And we always tell them, after finish, you tell me the sense. And most of the time, not 100%, but most of the time, it's much, much higher because everybody is waiting. And we did some survey also as well. We asked them, hey, why you wait until this round? We asked some of the bidders. And a lot of them, they say that, well, what happened is I missed the last round. It's too late, or I'm overseas. I'm not aware. So usually as an agent, when the price drop to an attractive price, we will market it for months in the media. So that's where all the prospective bidder got to know, and everybody go in at the same time. When the price is not that attractive, usually the advertisement, we don't push so much in the advertisement. So you know what you want, the price is cheap, it's reasonable cheap, go ahead, don't wait.
Telling all the investors out there, don't try to time the market. Do your research. Never listen.
Do your homework, and if the price is right, just go for it. Don't wait for it to drop.
Yes. But easier said than done, though.
We have bidders who were coming in with the bank draft, and what they do is they wait around. They ask around, they check around whether anybody bid or not, ask around. And after they found out that really nobody bid, they refuse to bid. They say, I can save 10%, wait for the next round. But then you know what happened the next round.
The price will keep on dropping and attract more
bidders.
Oh yeah, actually, Mr. Francis, the price will keep on dropping, right? For if there's no bidders for the bank doesn't actually successfully to sell, auction it off. Every round 10% they drop, right?
Different bank, different strategy. We have bank that refuse to drop, and we have bank that will drop 20% each round.
Wow. Okay, so 10% is not the standard. Okay.
Normally it's 10%, but certain bank they're very aggressive. What they do is they know how the bidder react. So every round they drop 20%. So it will attract a lot of bidder to bid up at a much higher price.
20%. Wow.
And they save on the auctioneer fees, and they can get a better price because of the crowd.
Say play with the emotions again.
Yes.
So another tip then for buyers, don't play with emotion. Just fix a price that you're willing to pay, and if it goes above that, then don't. You know, in the
Yes,
heat
yes.
of the moment, you see everybody is really into it and bidding to get the property, and you want to be a part of it, but you might not necessarily be prepared to pay for the price that, the final price, right? Due to everyone's eagerness to participate.
Mm,
Mm.
correct.
Okay, right. So, given that we are unable to conduct any internal inspection on the property, Francis, from your experience, then how do you review a property? Any practical tips for reviewing a property? Make sure that it's actually in good condition, it's not dilapidated, no hidden cost for fixing problematic damages to the property.
Okay, it depends what property you're looking at. You're talking about the new property which is just complete and under developer warranty. That one is no issue. Most of the people, what they worry is old building or old houses. But then again, I give you an example. If you're looking for an old property which is in a very established location, let's say Bandar Utama, okay? So if the bidder asks me the condition might be bad or whatsoever, I said, I give you an example. If you're going to buy a subsale, okay, you go in and look at the house and eventually you bought it. And what you're going to do next? You're going to renovate the whole house because the house is 30 over years, correct? Even though how well maintained, the design is 30 years old, the toilet and everything, you're not going to use it. You're going to renovate the whole house. So what's the difference now? Since you're going to knock everything down, redo the wiring, plumbing, what you're buying is basically the location. So if you intend to do this, I don't think so it's any issue, even though the house is well maintained. You're going to like hack here and basically rebuild the house. So most of them is going for the location rather than the condition of the house for more established area. But if you gonna market a property which is in the range of maybe 200,000-300,000, these people is more concerned because you know why they are more on the lower income. They don't have so much money to renovate. Okay, so these people always tend to look for the further away from the Klang Valley, but it's a newer house, so they don't need to spend so much money on renovation. So we ended up like more established location, old house. The investor go in and grab, and what they do is a lot of contractor nowadays they grab it, they redo it, and they sell it at a profit. So basically, it depends what you want, which area that you are targeting in. So the strategy will be different.
Okay, all right. How about in terms of getting loan, Kenny? Is there any tips that you can share in increasing someone's chances of having their loan approved?
Oh, okay. I think this one, everybody is talking about how to get their loans approved. But so far, I have not actually heard someone who mentioned that they should actually have a very good financial literacy before even a house. So my first not say advice, my first thought is that you should actually have a strong sense of financial literacy before you actually even think of applying a loan for a house or owning a house. Okay, that is number one. Then the second one, the thing is that for me personally, I would like to look for people like Mr. Francis himself as an expert for property, and then ask him about property, and then I will look for a banker who can advise me, on what to look out for the loan. And it's not that hard actually. There's only two things that you need to focus on. Every banker will tell you there's only two things. Number one is your credit score. Number two is your capacity, whether you can repay your loan. That's it. You will increase your chances already. The below part, all this, we leave it to the bank.
All right. Okay, lastly, Suzanne. Earlier we talked about, the importance of due diligence. Maybe this is really a time for you to elaborate a bit further. Maybe share with us, like, why it's so important to conduct a land search, for example. What any examples that you can give where your client was able to avoid a potential problem with the purchase of a property because he or she actually did a prior proper due diligence before actually getting into before actually buying, making the decision to purchase a particular property.
Yeah, I think due diligence is your first line of defense to actually avoid any of your costly mistakes. So, first thing is yes, conduct land search. It is important to conduct a fresh land search on the property title. To conduct a land search is just a small fee. RM 30 ringgit, you can get a very detailed land search. You can see a current information such as encumbrances, the tenure, the type of land use, the size of the lot, and also additional notes such as maybe restriction and interest and whatnot. So perhaps I would like to share one reported case that my team came across. Quite interesting. It's basically not doing your land search and also your due diligence. So in this case of Bayangan Sepadu Sdn Berhad, which was recently reported, so this successful bidder, he actually purchased a land by a public auction, which cost about 3.6 million. So at the first time he did conduct a land search, but he failed to do the site inspection. Yeah. So when you do your due diligence, it also means not only conducting your land search, but also it's best for you to actually go to the site of the property to view the surrounding of the property. Because in this case, there was a retention pond nearby, and it was not you can't see that information in the land search. So these are particular information that you have to actually visit the site. So there was this what do you call it? We call it this legal maxim where let the buyer beware, because you are buying as is where it basis. So you have to do your relevant searches to actually make sure that what you buy is what because these are the risks that you might have to take on at a later date. Okay, so make sure that yes, do your land search, do your site inspection. This means that because there are some instances, right? If let's say you go for auction property, and then you might not know that whether is there a tenant inside or not. So this is another example. So perhaps another tip that I could also share is perhaps visit the property at night. So because at night you will see there's a light at the property, right? Because daytime you can't see if there's someone in that particular building or not. So it's best to check if someone is occupying the building, or you can ask your neighbors in that particular, or you can check with the management if there's someone actually still residing in the property. So I guess main important thing to do is to do your basic due diligence check lah.
So if it turns out that there are really people living in the property, then it will be a whole process, getting court order to evict the tenants or even squatters, right? So it's
Yeah.
going to be a bit of a headache for the buyer.
Yeah, correct. If let's say eventually you discover that there is a tenant or there's a squatter still occupying the premise, right? You can only do the eviction after your proclamation or sale transaction is done, meaning to say that once your deed of assignment is already being assigned to you, or the strata title or individual title is already registered in your name, and the balance purchase price all have been released to the bank. So then only you can actually get a lawyer to actually apply for an order, and then from there you also need to lodge a police report with these two documents, and then only you can actually evict the tenant or the squatter.
So on top of paying for the purchase price, the stamp duty, everything, after all of this is done, you still have to hire lawyers, which is good news for for us, I guess, but bad news for the buyers, right? Because you have like all these additional expenses that you need to incur in order to get your property, which is why it's so important to not just conduct land search, but also actually conduct proper due diligence, which includes doing site visit at night, even if necessary.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so I guess ultimately, with any purchase, especially when it comes to properties, it comes with a certain degree of risks. What's really important is to mitigate those risks. You do your homework and make sure that you know what you're getting into. And if it's really bad apple, it's too cheap, too good to be true, avoid it. Or if make sure that if there's tenants living on a property, that just making sure that you do your homework and to mitigate the risk, and it shouldn't be treated any differently than buying a subsale or even from a developer. Sometimes even when it's brand new, if the developer is not reputable, you don't know anything about the developer, you might end up buying a worthless condo anyway, even if it's new. So it's really boils down to doing your homework. Shouldn't be scared off, right? Just because not too familiar with auction property, or just because you heard bad experience from one or two buyers, shouldn't write it off completely, because there really is an opportunity. Like what Francis shared, sometimes you can really get a good deal out of it. Okay, just to be ready, to just to understand what is the cost involved and be prepared to pay for it. And you might end up having a really good investment at a really good price. All right, so I guess this really concludes our fire chat session. It's been really good to have every one of you share your insights, your experience, in dealing with auction properties. I believe that audience, myself, I'm also looking to buying a property. I definitely benefited from this. A lot of these hidden costs, for example, extra due diligence works, that I wasn't aware of, and it's really helpful to make a more informed decision. All right. So I guess we've really run out of time, and we've really covered all of the bases, everything that we wanted to share with everyone. So I hope that everyone has had a good time. You have a couple of takeaways, things that you have learned from this session, and to go on embark on your journey to buying your first auction property. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Kenny, Francis, and
Thank
Suzanne,
you.
for
Thank
sharing
you
your
for joining
thoughts.
us. Thank you for
All right.
invitation. I hope it. I hope the
Second
audience got
round.
something.
Second round this time. Okay, thank you
Okay.
everyone. Good
Thank you.
evening.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.